Well, welcome to 2 Pints of Lager and a Spreadsheet. This is our 6th episode of this particular series. And title of today's podcast is What It Takes to Build a Thriving Team. I've got 3 fabulous guests. I'm really pleased. I mean, we've already had fun, haven't we? Just getting kicked off. We've had selfies and everything. So I think this is going to be a great episode. Let's go straight into it, I think. Sam, what do you think? Culture or capability? Like, what's the glue that keeps a team together?
Definitely culture, in my opinion, as I look to my left.
Yes.
I think that capability and skills in particular are something that can be taught. I do think that if you find the right individual, you can invest in them and you can bring them into the role that you want to develop them in if you're willing to invest in people. So I think that kind of shared values, shared purpose, that's what you're looking for when you're building teams.
I think your culture as well, doesn't it? That identifies what skills you value. So if you have a culture that clearly stands for values or things that are unique to your organisation and you want to encourage behaviours in line with that, then that's going to determine the skills and capabilities that you really want to support your team to develop. So I think you have to be clear on culture before you can even think about capabilities.
And I guess this is the foundation, isn't it? This is from day one, would you say?
Yeah. I think when you're first setting up a business, when I first set up Talentheads, for example, it was just me. So you're kind of going in with your own personal kind of, you know what your value set is, you know your why, you know your reasons why you're trying to set something up, and you know why you think it will work in your market. And it's not until you start getting some individuals around that you can start to really kind of solidify through that collaboration on what does a business look like. But I think that needs to be done in the early days, because then when you're recruiting people and you're bringing them in, you want that common shared kind of perspective, because that helps you retain your team in the longer term as well.
And your current business, Connection Heroes, second business?
Well, there's a few. Depends if you include side hustles, to be fair. So third main business. And
was culture, was it there in your first business, or have you learned over time that this is really the glue that keeps the team together?
Yeah, to be honest, I mean, this business, Connection Heroes, it's all about helping organisations understand and improve human connection. So it would be a bit weird if that wasn't really at the core of what we're doing. But it was definitely, in fact, it wasn't my first business that really helped me understand the importance of that human connection teamwork. It was weirdly when I was a drunken student and I was captain of the uni footy team.
Yeah.
Way before like the Lionesses and it was all trendy. But we were this group of footballers and we were crap. We weren't really good footballers. We were unfit. We were in the bar all the time. Yet somehow we kept winning week after week after week, all the way to the national final.
Wow.
I was like, how did that happen? How did we do that? And it wasn't because of our football skills. It was because we trusted each other. We really understood each other. We could depend on each other. We'd do anything for each other. And we were both all galvanised with this just desire to play football all year. And that team spirit just translated into results. So I carried that into my first business. And I guess with this business, I'm trying to break down the science behind that team connection and how it makes businesses scale and grow. So yeah, it's intrinsic to how I work.
And Trevor, ex-footballer as well? Or still play football? I don't know.
No, the knees not quite up to that. Yeah.
And would you say, I mean, was your interest in your current business? Tell us a little bit about your current business, because you'll explain it much better than I ever will.
Yeah, well, it's just we help sort of cultural transformation, sort of based on behavioural analytics. So it's try to keep it quite simple, but it's just inevitably, as Sam and Di are saying, it is quite complex because of different reasons. So it's talking about culture and things like that. It's for me, it's like looking at behaviours. It's the aligned behaviours to the values. At the end of the day, what is culture? It's like a big topic that you look at. But for me, it is about behaviours in terms of trying to recruit and develop the right behaviours that match the leaders of the business and the vision of where you're trying to go with the company. But it sounds simple, and it unfortunately it isn't that easy for lots of reasons that I'm sure we'll cover as we go through.
Definitely. And when we meet a lot of early stage businesses, the last podcast in this series was all about raising funds and money, wasn't it? And we got talking during that podcast around culture in the team being the most important part of the jigsaw as that business sort of scales and kind of grows. When I mean, should it be day one that a founder's thinking about, you know, this team spirit and getting like,
I don't see any reason why not. I think because, again, like what Sam mentioned there, you're setting your values and stuff, which should be aligned to what you want yourself to build. So there's no reason it shouldn't be day one.
Yeah.
But it's the team stuff and the cultural stuff. We hear it all the time. But most people, it's not real in terms of when they talk about it. It's like some of the words they use, but there's not an appreciation of really what it means. Just generally with culture and things in the UK particularly, as well as global, but particularly in the UK, I think there's a complete lack of understanding or desire for leaders of businesses, generally speaking, to actually engage and drive high-performing teams. Because of a lack of know-how and a lack of education around the subject, lots of reasons. But I think there's a lack of capability around high-performing teams, leadership, culture, that type of thing.
And I would just add on that the people part is the hardest part of having a business. And I definitely think, as someone who's set up a business myself, like, you've got all of these ideas and you're inspired and you're ready to go. And actually, if you get the people bit wrong, it makes it so much tougher for you. And actually, definitely speaking from personal experience, that's the hardest part for me. You know, managing your teams, making sure that you're the leader that you want to be, making sure that you're leading by example, that your business is psychologically safe, like all of those great things that you need to do to have the right culture. If you don't have that culture, it is one of those things that will slow your growth down.
It's tricky though, isn't it? I think one thing about if you over-engineer, or if we go in the founder mindset, you've got so much to do in that space, and there's a hell of a lot of conflict. And one of the big conflicts is you don't have the time. You're trying to understand your customer need, you're trying to develop your product, you're trying to sell. Taking time out at that point to start creating values and culture statements and stuff, there's no point where you could over-engineer stuff. Whereas if you just have some few fundamental truths, and I think the fundamental truth, which is the foundation for all high-performing teams, is truth, isn't it? It's trust, rather, psychological safety. Yeah. And that's really hard. If you're in that founder mindset and you're going maybe for investment and you're building a brand that doesn't really exist, you're in that sort of fakery space where you want to project this sense of being really successful, and you're wanting to project kind of, accountability and you're a safe pair of hands, whereas, the reality is you're scrapping bits together and you're doing bits of coding, or you've got all of this scrappy stuff. When you start building a team around you, you need to show them that scrappy stuff, because you need to be honest, you need to be authentic, and you need to be vulnerable, so that you're saying to everybody, I want you want people to mirror your behaviour. So I think that's really hard in that founder mindset to balance this, what you want to be and where you're going and what you'd love your value and your cultures to be, versus the realities of scrappy startup, things being broken, things not working. And when you're building that early stage team, I think that what's most important is to establish a culture of trust. Values, specific stuff, sometimes they can evolve as you go, but that's, to me, would be the absolute foundation, because you've got to let the wires hang out and let your people see them and help you fix them.
And it is a journey, without a doubt. I think what you are on day one compared to what you are on the first year, the 5th year, the 10th year, you do want your people to be on that journey with you. And I think you're absolutely right, Di. I think if you do put it kind of all down on paper and then stick to that from day one, then that's not going to go anywhere, because it does need to evolve. And I do think in smaller businesses as well, people do join smaller businesses because they like the entrepreneur part of it, because they're messy and they can get involved in something and they can build something with someone. So I do think those kind of foundations always need to be readdressed and just evolve as the business goes through those different stages of growth.
And you, as a founder, I was 24, I think, when I found my first business. I had no bloody clue. Absolutely no clue. And our first few recruits were young graduates. They didn't have a clue either. We figured it all out together. And then when we actually generated some revenue, we could actually then hire some people that had the experience and knew what they were doing. We were at year 5 by then. So there's just so much. That's the joy of startup, isn't it? But hardness of it as well.
Yeah, it's great fun at that point. And exciting, and
Yeah, it is.
and I think it's how do you maintain that fun and excitement as the business grows and becomes more complex, doesn't it? Because we're work in progress forever. That's the thing. I remember sitting there 5 years in with Blue Sky, and myself and Dave were sat there, and he was like, we're still a work in progress. It's like, we're 5 years old.
You always feel like that, though. For some reason, you just feel like you've just actually started. That's how I feel. But I think it's interesting as well in terms of, particularly for founders and co-founders, because can you motivate each other? Do you enjoy working together? Because in our experience, we see a lot of directors, founders, shareholders who they haven't got the trust. They haven't got a relationship, the communication breaks down. We see it time and time again. So some of the toxic behaviour, which obviously ripples through, actually starts with the owners of the company. So if they're not engaged with their own company, or their own company as in the business, but the company with each other, then it's really difficult to motivate other people.
Yeah,
It's true. Because like you said earlier, that your culture's formed by the actual behaviours.
Yeah.
Someone that got to phrase it far better than me said, your culture's it's the actual weather. It's not the weather forecast. It's the actuals, the stuff that goes on. It's whether you walk in the office and it's sunny or it's pissing it down. You can feel it. So that's the behaviours. But it's also, it's not just encouraging and upskilling people to deliver those behaviours. It's stopping the behaviours that go against the culture you're trying to create. And quite often the behaviours that are countering the culture is the leaders, isn't it?
Yeah, completely. At the end of the day, you get what you tolerate, and if you're tolerating certain behaviours, then that's exactly what you're going to get. But it starts, particularly with his co-founders and business partners, it's getting those people aligned to start with, and because you might enjoy working with them at the start. Yeah, and yourself and Dave as an example, John. Yeah, you've had a long time together.
a long marriage.
And it all went well. But yeah, I would say that is not the norm from my experience.
I got quite a messy divorce from my first business partner.
And you look back and think, why on earth did I go into business with them or that? But you do at the time for lots of different reasons. But it's difficult to motivate yourself in that environment. Never mind motivate the people who work with you or for you.
I do think it is important, though, that the full business does see that culture is a responsibility of everyone. Like, I do think that you get a true reflection of what a culture feels like when the senior leaders are out of the office or out of on site or wherever it is that business is based. I think how the behaviours and how people act with one another and how clients are supported and stuff without someone more senior there does dictate how that culture is actually felt.
And that gets harder. We work with organisations now that thousands of staff, multiple sites, really struggling to create a sense of consistent culture. So number one, do you want or need a consistent culture? That's kind of up for debate, but you definitely need to be consistent in some of the core values that you want to operate within.
Yeah.
And organisations now, we're working more distributed than ever. We're working asynchronously. Attitudes towards work have been changing for decades. It didn't just change, a few years ago to the pandemic. We've been, what's changed? We've had job tenure. It's the 80s since people had a job for life, isn't it? Do you know what I mean? Those jobs for life, and therefore your work colleagues being your mates for life. That stopped decades ago. We had the gig economy and 0 hours contract, which was all about just being more transactional. We had from the 90s and the noughties conversations about work-life balance, which was we don't want work to be all consuming anymore, we want it to break up. So things have been changing for years now, and to me the organisations that are building the right sort of cultures they're admitting that things have changed, and they're like, right, God, we can't necessarily go back to that all being in the office anymore, but human connection still matters. This stuff that people trust in each other, seeing and hearing each other, valuing each other. If we don't get these basics right, we can't do the good, innovative, collaborative, risk-taking work. We're going to be stuck. So the organisations, I think, that are thriving now, they're looking for new ways to innovate, to keep their teams wherever they're working from and however they're working, keep them feeling connected and somehow kind of operating as a team. It's really hard when you get bigger and you need systems to make that happen. It's really, really tough.
We started with culture versus capability there. How do you bring capability in? Because I guess it is still important at different parts, probably especially as you start to grow as well.
I think just to start on that one, because it's something I'm quite passionate about in terms of the development and the capability piece. So obviously it depends on the job. Yeah, if you're an accountant and you've got to have qualifications or certificates and stuff like that. If you're a brain surgeon, you'd like to think they've got some kind of or whatever. I mean, a lot of things behaviours, attitudes, mindset and stuff like that. But talking on the capability thing, I think there's particularly with what we call the key influencers, so the people who are going to engage other people, and it depends on the size of the organisation, obviously, but there has to be an ongoing mindset of wanting to develop people, particularly the people who are going to be motivating, engaging, mentoring the other people in the business, and they need to be developed in lots of different ways as well. But it's about the ongoing development. It's almost like, particularly with the management, it's almost like, oh, we done a management course 3 years ago and it didn't work. Yes, we're not doing that again. And I just think, what's the return on investment? It's like, I've only spent 2 days with them. What do you think's going to change? So it's almost like, if you, in terms of sort of managers, I think the latest stats was saying 60% of managers haven't been trained to manage. So it's just a disaster waiting to happen. And no wonder the engagement is 10% in the UK. So it's just not rocket science.
It's crazy. And I think that's the thing, that the skills that I feel so sorry for managers at the moment. They're just properly squeezed, aren't they? And they're not getting the support they need. And it's like the latest Gallup report that came out said, if you look at kind of all the factors that make your team feel engaged, employees feel engaged, 70% of that is down to the manager.
Yeah.
So engagement isn't an HR job anymore. It's the manager's job now to figure out how to keep his team engaged. It's like, well, that's just another set of skills on top of having to know how to do their job.
Completely, and it is, I say, the ongoing bit. It's like, I think, the simple maths, if you develop, it's like if you do a development program for your managers, and you should look for 5% improvement as a guide. But people think they should come out of it a brilliant manager or completely different behaviours. It's just crazy, really. And it's like thinking of, if they improve 5%, year on year for 5 years, they'll be, I think it's just under 30% better. So you've got to have the mindset of saying it's the right thing to do. Yeah. So let's not worry about the return on investment. Let's trust that culture of ongoing improvement is what we should be looking for.
Totally agree. We talk about mindset, then skill set, then tool set, and we're finding organisations saying people, they're not sharing knowledge anymore, or communications crap across teams and stuff. And I don't know why it's crap, because they've got Slack and they've got this, and they just list all the tools that they've got. And we're like, well, do they have the skills to use those tools? Well, yeah. It's like, right, well, what's their mindset? What are they wanting out of them? Are they using kind of Zoom just as an update tool, or are they wanting to use Zoom to help people get to know each other and build relationships as a team? The mindset piece determines everything, doesn't it?
Yeah. I think the early part of my career, the leader had followers. And that was kind of the hierarchy. And something I'm keen on, and I'm always exploring and learning myself, is how do you develop a team of leaders at all levels, and that then fits back into that trust and high performing team as well. I think
that's a good point, John, actually, in terms of the leader developing the leaders, because I think that's the biggest gap. And why we're really struggling to engage people and motivate people at work, because we can't influence the people who are going to influence.
Yeah.
So I think that's where that next level of leadership is crucial.
Do you think there's a fear thing, though? Do you think there's a fear that, you're sort of your average tier of managers and leaders, they've built their careers and their confidence in, let's call it the old way of work, managing line of sight and that kind of thing. And there's a new kind of generation of people coming through who actually can handle this more distributed, asynchronous way of working much better, and that drives fear, doesn't it? And
absolutely,
that's really hard.
It is, and I think it's a lack of know-how. Now, getting people motivated to influence people is not a skill some people are born with. Some people can have a certain set of influence and communication skills and can do it a bit more naturally and build rapport with people and this type of stuff. But a lot of people, it doesn't come naturally. So how do you motivate and engage? And often you've got the middle group of managers trying to motivate and engage when they haven't been engaged and motivated. So it's just not going to work, and it breaks down at that middle management level.
You do hear all the time about people who are promoted who have been really good specialists in their roles, and then their promotion is, let's put them in front of a team, let's get them to lead. And that's not a skill that they've got, or a skill that sometimes they don't actually want to try and craft. So we're putting people in roles because we want to reward them in some way, and we think that they can lead because they're good at what they do, but actually that then all falls down. And like you say, if everyone's looking at that manager saying like 70%, that's a lot of responsibility if that person person sitting in a role that actually they shouldn't be in, and they've never really asked to be in.
Yeah. But I think the stats play out. We see that.
Yeah.
You know, you can have the best company, the values and all of this great stuff in the environment and brilliant pay and everything. But if you haven't got a good relationship with your line manager, you're not going to enjoy going to work. Yeah, it's pretty simple.
It's that old thing where people leave managers, jobs though, don't they?
Completely.
I remember my first my big learning experience as a leader and manager for me was, you know, the first business that I ran, that first recruit, who was the experienced one, who was probably 7-8 years older than me. We were running a small marketing agency. He worked in agencies all over Berlin and London, and it was super impressive. And I remember we were coming up to our first big pitch deadline with him. And I could feel myself starting to get stressed. I was operating from my sort of primitive brain. I was fueled with adrenaline, and it was like, I kind of enjoyed it, but kind of shit myself because we didn't have the creative concept nailed. And then Simon, this senior guy, he came to me and said, Di, I need to go surfing. I was like, what? You can't do that. We've got the deadline. It's due in tomorrow. He's like, we need to crack it. You need to let me go surfing. And I just remember having this moment of, this doesn't add up with everything I thought you needed to do to be a leader, be a boss, and you know, you should keep your team in the office. And I just went, right, okay, go surfing. And I remember, I can still feel it now, and it's like 25 years ago. And he went off surfing the day, and he messaged me that day saying, I've done it. That was it, just 2 words, done it. And he came in the next morning, he'd had the concept of that. And that to me was this absolute reality. If you just step back and you trust people, and if people in your organisation are mature enough to have figured out what makes them tick and how they do their best work, your job as a manager leader, isn't it, is to let them crack on and facilitate. And it was such a big
it's a good example of thinking of it almost outcome driven rather than just you're there for 40 hours clocked on, or because the hybrid stuff, it is got to be based on trust to some degree. And you can have your KPIs and things like that, but it should be judged on outcomes, not how long you're in the office.
I definitely feel like that some of the things that I've learned more recently about being a leader as well is that people don't expect you to have all the answers anymore. Whereas historically, and definitely the kind of person that I am, I want to have a plan B. I want to be 2 or 3 steps ahead. I want to make sure I know what's happening and I can anticipate it, and that everyone's cool because I've got them. And that was kind of my leadership style. And I thought that's how I got respect, and that's how I worked really well with people. And it hasn't been until times have been tougher that then I haven't had the time to get my head around, because I'm a bit of a reflector, get my head around what is the plan B. Well, that was a bit of a shock. What is the next step? That I've been open and honest and vulnerable with people, that then people have gone, well, actually, what about this? And have you thought about that? And I've then thought, actually, it's engaged them more that I haven't got a plan B yet, that I'm collaborating with them and asking them, what do you think? And that's kind of brought the team even closer together, because they've got a say in it. Whereas I thought my role as a leader was to say, don't worry about that. That's gone a little bit sideways. It was always going to go a little bit sideways, but we're going to do this instead. And actually, I think that that's really brought all of the team up to be able to say, I think this, and what about that? And actually, this is our business, not just my business. So I do think there are certain things that we have been taught over the years, that you need to have everything together as a leader.
Command and control.
And I think that's quite difficult sometimes to break down, because that's kind of in you. But actually, I've definitely seen firsthand that when you do break that down, you do let yourself become a little bit more human and authentic. I know it's a bit of a buzzword. People do really buy into that, and actually, you probably move from A to B quite a lot quicker than what you would have done if you were doing it yourself.
I think as well on that point as well, Sam, in terms of obviously the ownership and getting people bought in and involved and stuff like that. I think absolutely. And I think one thing with leaders though and business owners is the expectations they have. The people in your business will never care about the business as much as you. And so I think the expectations of the leaders, you need to sort of maybe drop it to appreciate that, because they're not you, it's not their business. I've got
to say though, I do think that some of the early people in my business live and breathe a business, not to the degree they don't have to worry on the 25th of the month about paying salaries. They're not up all night, and I wouldn't expect them to be up all night. But there are some people in my business that have got the same passion or a degree over passion for the level of what I'm expecting of them. I think you can get that level of buy-in.
It's the Dan Pink stuff, isn't it, when he talks about intrinsic motivation, and he talks about mastery, autonomy and purpose. And I think the reality is everyone's got different motivation. And the mastery, supporting people to become masters of their art or their skill through, really guided training and support. Autonomy, letting them crack on and not micromanaging. The purpose thing, it's really important for some people, not for others. And a lot of people that are aligning with business purpose, being part of it, seeing the impact of their actions can have a really big impact. When for other guys, just like, if I can code the best bit of software in the world, I'm happy. It's really different, isn't it? And I think, a lot of leaders do with that. Yeah, but I'm motivated by purpose, and I've got, therefore everyone else should be. Nah, some people just want to do a good day's work and go home.
And that's all right.
Yeah.
Do you think that's changed? You were talking before about over the decades. Do you think that?
Yeah, people do not have the same relationship that they used to, and the number of people I think who have so much of their personal identity wrapped up in work, that's shifting. So I think we're seeing one of the biggest challenges that we're seeing in the organisations we're working with is the shift to just very transactional working. Now, on the one hand, you think, fine, if you're the sort of person that just wants to go and do your job, go home, that's not a bother. Or if you run a sort of company where actually it's very repetitive transactional work, then it's not a bother. But if you're an organisation that needs to innovate, that needs to collaborate, that wants to scale, then things start to break if you're transactional. Because if you're transactional, you haven't really got each other's back. You're not building trust. You're not building authentic relationships. And how that plays out in reality is we're seeing things like people are telling us, I don't like asking for help. I don't know my colleagues that well. I don't want to ask for help because I don't want to bother them or I don't want to seem weak. Mm-hmm. If you've not got a level of safety that allows you to ask for help when you need it, you're pretty screwed. Or people are telling us, we're not allowed, when we have calls, we're not allowed to waste time on chit chat. And we're like, right. What I'm hearing when we're saying that is we're not allowed to understand each other as humans. We're not allowed to build relationships. We're not actually allowed to understand maybe, how do you like to share ideas? How do you like to, we're not allowed to learn about each other because it's seen as wasting time and chit chat. So there's this just focus towards this transactional stuff, which I think is really bad for people and really bad for productivity. And that's why we're having this whip back to RTO mandate is, companies are starting to realise this connection's breaking down and relationships aren't what they were. But instead of saying, so how do we make them better whilst we retain people's flexibility, just saying, quick, back in the office. And it's like, it's a bit broken.
Yeah. I do think it's an interesting one, Steve, though, because I do hear a lot, obviously in my kind of circle with my specialism, around people tarring generations with certain brushes. And I think personally that's like really damaging because work has changed, but I don't think it is necessarily, my personal opinion, because of certain generations. I think just work has evolved and time has evolved. And we put kind of stereotypes on the generation that's coming through. That's the future talent, might be this or might be that. And I think that's quite harmful.
It can be, but I think there are also trends though. Like, sorry to put me skills on it. But I think
Fight.
I think you're right. And I think the element is it's our ability to change our minds. It's on neuroplasticity, and there is a hands up predominantly male stale bracket of leader managers in certain sectors who are more.
I've worked for a few of them. It's awful.
Yeah. But it's true, and I've met several of them, and I wish they didn't exist, but they do. And there's this resistance to change. And I think that we need to find new ways of doing things, or that our managers need different skills now to stay connected and build engagement. And so, and I think a lot of the younger workforce coming through, they don't have the same relationships that our parents did or I did for work. Where I was like, I go into work, I have to work as hard as I can, the number of hours. That is dissipating. That attitude is definitely dissipating, and it is creating a culture clash.
But don't you think that is also happening for other people who might not just be at that age bracket?
Yes, it's happening. Women and underrepresented groups are the least. I can't remember the statistics, but there was a report out a couple of weeks ago, London School of Economics, and it was about how many people would just say a blank no if their bosses tried to mandate a full-time return to office, and the biggest response was from women with primary age school kids. So that's not to do with their age; it's about the chapter in their life that they are, So that there's definitely and these forced RTOs. And that line of thinking definitely impacts women and underrepresented groups way more.
Yeah, and I do think there's some of the things that we talk about that I've been privy to conversations about that we do now because we're trying to engage with the younger generations coming through. I do think we should have been doing that years and years ago, and then people would have maybe had stronger voices and maybe said no to you have to be the first one in, and you have to be the last one out to be the star team member. So I just think there was a bit of a I do think now people are more willing to say what they'll do and what they don't want to do. And I do think that will help
good thing.
every single generation. And that's exactly what I'm saying. Now we're talking about neurodiversity and we're talking about all of those great things, and it should help all of the generations.
I think it's having an appreciation, though, that work is called work for a reason. And I think it's Trevor said this to me once, and there is going to be a point in your day where you've just got to do some stuff that is work. And sometimes that's the bit where I'm saying no to that. It's kind of like, no, that's the unconditional. That's your core role. That's kind of what you be. That's where we're going to get value from you as a team member.
It's got to be a return, and
Well,
I think sometimes that does get lost.
And at the end of the day, people are in it for themselves. In the days of thinking that people are coming to work to help you build whatever you want to do or hit the targets and stuff like that, I think it is pretty much gone in a general sense. I think understanding what people want, and you have to be there as a leader or an organisation to give the people what they want, because otherwise it's just that they'll find it elsewhere. They'll find it elsewhere.
I think that's the hard thing now. It's so easy to change jobs, and I think there is things like that have come in that it's probably moved that with the younger generations quicker than what it was in the past, because you can change jobs quicker, you can kind of the freedom of movement and all that type of stuff for people.
I think that's possible because I feel like there's been some sort of movement or some sort of really seismic kind of power balance shift in the workplace. And my background's in comms and marketing, and I remember when social media really established itself, literally within 2 or 3 years, it changed the principles of corporate communications. So pre-social media, consumers understood and bought on the basis of what a company said. So a company used broadcast media, said this is what we're all about, buy the product. And so people's purchase decisions were made on what the company said. That was that. And so all of a sudden there was this power to the people's voice when social media started happening. People started buying what their mates said was good, not what the company said. And the companies that couldn't struggle to adjust to that went pop. And I feel like there's almost something similar happening in the workplace now, where companies say, work is on our teams, these are our contracts of engagement, work in this way, and then all of a sudden, sped up by the pandemic, things shifted. They're like, well, hang on, you've been lying to me. You could work from home. I can't have this flexibility. You show me the proof. You show me the data that shows we're going to be more productive. I'll come back in the office. So there's been this power shift and this surge of, okay, well, I don't just have to do what you tell me. And it's happened so quickly. It's really tough.
Do you think there's a shift as well from managing to coaching?
I think it's starting. Necessarily because of this role of the manager being so influential in how engaged their teams are, which obviously impacts productivity, retention, and all of those costly business KPIs. I think we're way off seeing them.
I think that absolutely needs to be. I think it is. It has started, and there's rumblings of it. You don't really see it that much, if I was perfectly honest. But it does need to go that way, because people will respond better to an empowered coaching style rather than just do as I say because I pay you. I think the coaching thing is about, at the end of the day, it's about listening and understanding what the person wants, and it's not just all about giving them everything they want. At the end of the day, it's a shared responsibility between the line manager, the employee expectations, and the organisation. But it's you've got to listen to them. You've got to try and make them fulfilled in what they expect from that career in that job. Because otherwise, they're just not going to come to work just because they get paid.
Yeah, you can't brush stroke it. You've got to understand individually what motivates people and what makes them thrive and what they're looking for, and then you have to adapt things around that. But I think it is important to make it has to be both ways. It does
completely. Sometimes it's just not a good fit.
Yeah.
You've got to understand what you want out of your job and your career, and what the company objectives are. Sometimes it's just not fit.
Yeah.
So they're fine, move on. But I think the closer you can bridge that gap between what the people want out of that job and where the company wants to go, and if you cannot bridge that gap, it's a win-win if you can, because it'll flow more easily. And at the end of the day, when people's involved, it's gonna be tricky. It's just gonna be tricky because I get up some days and I'm not motivated. Yeah, and I've got to try and motivate other people. Quite a bit, actually. But it's not easy to to look at the different aspects that's involved when people are involved. But for me, yeah, a passion element of it is you've got to understand what people want from it.
Yeah, I agree.
I guess we've talked a lot there. What do you think the main foundations are to start that building process? If you're building a team from day one, what would your top tips be for someone?
Apart from not bother.
I was going to say stunned silence for the first time today.
Something what you said kind of earlier about kind of like being outcomes driven. So I think your one job as a founder, or your key job as a founder when you grow in your early stage, is to make your why incredibly clear. Why are we doing this? It doesn't have to be kind of like the finely polished mission statement, but it's like, why are we really doing this? But you've got to be, why are we doing this commercially, and why are we doing it for us as humans? I think you've got to have, even if you're a kick or you're a social enterprise, you've still got to have a commercial element to your proposition in order to keep going. So I think you've got, and your goal, I think, and your role as the founder is to attract the founding team to the people that will share and buy in to that mission and have the skills to do it.
I always think they're really good. We've talked about it a lot, haven't we? And then you hear about people like NASA was to get to the moon, and then Disney is to make people happy.
Yeah.
When you've got something like that, just really short and snappy.
Some people, I've worked for sort of 20 odd years with people on various versions of crafting mission and vision statements, value propositions. And some people naturally as a founder are just super forward thinking, super ambitious and want to be to the moon, and that's fine, and that'll attract a certain sort of people. Others are much more pragmatic, and I want to invest with fivefold, and I want to sell it on the basis of building this product. That's fine too.
Yeah.
That'll attract a different mindset. I don't think you need to be. I think that's one of the problems of attracting team is, especially in the startup space, it's very easy to be cookie cutter. That's the phrase, isn't it? So we're going to be the Instagram of this, or we're going to be. Yeah. It's like that's really hard because you're not doing that really original thinking about what's our, the technical term, our employer value proposition. What's the promise that we're going to make to our team? What do we want to stand for? Because if you do the deep thinking of what uniquely your promise is to your people, that stops what you were saying about those disagreements happening, because that's what you promote to your prospects. Mm-hmm. This is our promise. This is what we're about. This is what we care about. And then your policies and your practices, they wrap around that. So if you're a startup and you want to stand for risk taking and you really want to drive high risk behaviour, be upfront about it, and you'll attract people who like that. And then you'll wrap, for example, your reward and your recognition strategies around that. You'll reward risk taking, and you'll help people develop their behaviours if they're not, if that's dropping off the mark. Or if you say, we're really customer centric, we're all about what the customer does, and then you have like the boss turn up one day and want you to build a widget just because you had a dream about it last night, that's got to not be allowed. So if you do that really early stage thinking about just the basic stuff that matters, and you communicate that to prospects and you deliver on it to your early team, you should be writing off a lot of possible errors.
And I think you mentioned that the why and why you do it, obviously really important. But I think even at a simplistic level, I think it's when you're starting to put the teams together is, bring people in who you get on with. Yes, they have to have a level of capability, of course they do, but you've got to get on with people.
Yeah, but you have got to be careful that you don't recruit people who are like
I was just about to say, what about diversity?
Yeah,
I would like them. It's like,
Loads of mini Johns.
yeah. Oh God.
And I think that is always a risk of that. Yeah, and we see that, so you've got to try and screen against that, which can be difficult. But I'm not just saying employ people who will like you. Employ people who you can get on with, because you can still get on with people who are different through different ways. But I think you've got to sometimes you can have a gut feel that that's probably not my type of person, but you'll be sucked into their skills, or even when they're already in, you can get sucked into their performance and their targets and things. So for me, especially in the teams, in my experience with teams, if something's not working well in the team and there's an obvious person or angle why it's not, you've got to remove it.
I think that helps massively with stuff like conflict resolution and all that type of stuff, because you can have them open, frank conversations much easier and everything like that.
Yeah.
Can I say, I think that instead of having the gut feeling, for me, I think it's more about that's where the values become really useful, because it removes your personal opinion and you start talking about what your non-negotiables are within your values. So actually that high performance bit, if they're not a values fit, we all know, we've all been on the courses, we all know that they have to go. The performance might be fine, but actually if they're not a values fit, they're not within an organisation. I always go back to the values and try and leave my gut, because I feel like it's about the business rather than what I think necessarily, what's good for the business rather than what feels better for me.
I think, like Trev, you obviously seem a guy like you've got quite a high level of self-awareness. So your gut probably isn't actually gut. You're probably very aware, for example, of your own unconscious bias, whereas a lot of people just hiring for that gut feeling, you've probably got a lot of confirmation bias at play.
It's not just when I say the gut feel, that's obviously one element. Because we use sophisticated behavioural assessments as part of the recruitment process and things. But I say to people, they can be the best fit ever for the assessment. If you don't get the feeling, then you've got to really listen to that gut feeling. It's a balance. You've got to use both, obviously. But I think if you all the assessments and CV and experience tells you that they could be a great fit. But if you're sat there in the interview and it's not clicking, it's got to be the right interview type process and everything. But if somebody's telling you it's not right, it's probably, in my opinion, it's probably because it's not going to be right.
We've got a great guy in our team at the minute, Adi, and his recruitment process was, I wish we could replicate it every time. The first time he came in the office, Adi and Steve were in the room together, and I was hanging around sort of late as usual. And I looked and I thought, wow, there's something going on there. I walked in the room, and straight away you could feel that you could feel the value fit. You could feel everything, and you're nothing like each other. You know, completely miles apart. Then Adi came in, and he was in the business for 3 months on a trial, his request, our request, and it was like we just worked it all out. It was very open. He's like, I'm not sure. What you're not sure about? We're not sure. And you just had this dialogue. Now you can't always do that because often people are in a role anyway, but that good feel, and the other bits stack up. His behavioural assessment stacks up, his CV stacks up, but it was just
There's something about when you get that connection. And we've been trying to work, we keep changing it a little bit, like trying to define what that human connection is. And especially when you look across the team, because one thing about connection is there's a mutuality to it.
Yeah.
So when you look at other kind of people-y type measures like engagement and the NPS, it's an opinion, or are you engaged in this, or are you engaged sort of one way, would you recommend us? Whereas when you've got that connection happening, like between Steve and AD or whatever it was, the way we've designed it is about whether people see, hear, value and trust each other. And that's kind of what's happening in that. You're seeing and hearing something. There's different levels of listening and engagement with something. And sometimes you have that level where you're able to go to that deeper level of understanding. You're able to see and hear something about them for whatever reason more than you would someone else. And then again, there's a mutuality, the way you trust each other. Trust is two ways. It's not one. And again, you can build that trust and also that value. Do you value each other? Do you value what you bring to the table? Even if it's different to what you bring, and it's that mutual kind of respect that comes with it. And
I get Sam, you mentioned vulnerability as well earlier, and even now I'm like, I try to be vulnerable, which sounds weird, do you know what I mean? But I've still got this sort of barrier. Is the leader of the business? Can I?
Shouldn't show it.
Oh, yeah. And then you give it, and you're like, oh, why is everyone looking at us like that? Do you know what I mean? But you go through that through leadership, don't you? And having that team around you who you trust and they trust you, and you can just have that open conversation. Tell us when I'm being an arse. Tell us when I'm being good. It's kind of like that. That's what you want.
Better then, doesn't it? When you're running businesses and it is like that, and there's no hierarchy. Obviously, someone has to make some of the decisions. Some people have got different roles to play in a business, but it feels so much better as a business owner, as a leader of a business, where you feel like you can be yourself and people are themselves, and you're just bringing the best versions and sometimes the hardest versions together and trying to kind of work it all out.
I think sometimes as well, people rock up at work and we're a high performing team. Yeah. It's like, reference football again. PSG just won the Champions League. Did they turn up that morning? Group of 11 players get on the pitch and win a football match at the highest level. It's gone over and over again. They've failed, they've made mistakes, they've brought the wrong person in, the right person in, the right person's left. It's kind of this ongoing journey all the way.
It's a good example actually to use at PSG, because obviously they went through a transitional period where they bought the top stars, but it weren't gelling as a team, even though individually they were so-called the best players on the planet. And they sort of went away from that a bit and went back to the more of a team mentality. Obviously spent a fortune still, but they've just won in the Champions League, which probably based more on team than just the individuals.
We've talked a lot about hiring. What do you think the steps are after hiring when you're growing the people that you've got in the business?
Well, I think even before you get to growing, it's that most people bugger off in the first few months, don't they?
Yeah.
And that's
Is that the stats?
Yeah. It doesn't say bugger off.
Yeah.
But that's what both parties are thinking.
That's what makes it. It's that promise alignment, isn't it? Have you been truthful in you presenting what an employee experience is going to be, and then do you deliver against that? And people in that first 3 months, it was interesting about your guy AD. He kind of requested a 3 months.
Worked for him, worked for us. Yeah.
Which is brilliant, because there should be that mutual trust, isn't it? So I think your onboarding process is your first kind of big potential point of failure. And what we're finding time and time again is there's nothing in that. So you might be, learning your tools of your trade and so on, but are you kind of seeing them instructed? Is your opinion brought in that first 3 months, or are you still kind of making cups of tea? Or that first 3 months is a real opportunity for a new recruit to kind of like get to know you and they'll underline and how it is, but for the rest of the company to get to know them. And I think, especially with distributed teams, we're finding that's really problematic. People joining companies are not getting engaged and embraced. I don't know, Sam, if you're finding that with...
Yeah. I think the communication aspect is something that is important. I think someone comes in the door, they're given the keys or they're given their laptop and then they're left to it. Mm-hmm. So that kind of lack of communication and making sure that you regularly touching in, that person feels like they've got someone to go to, that there's a buddy scheme or there's something there, that they've got that kind of constant, well-being element associated to it, as well as, knowing what's happening in the business and that they are part of that business by the communication, what's shared with them. I do hear that is lacking sometimes, especially like you say, if there's people working remotely, working hybrid, people might not have the same hours as other individuals. That lack of communication really factors in the decision of, do they feel like they belong in this business? Because that's what we're trying to do, is we're trying to create cultures where people feel like they can bring their true versions of themselves to the business, but they belong there and they're safe and they're recognised and they're rewarded for it. And I think that's sometimes that's kind of missing when we do have teams all over the place or different.
I think what's important as well as the things that Sam and Di said is people have got clear objectives and targets. So what's expected of them, particularly in the early days where they might lack a bit of confidence or unfamiliarity. So having clear objectives.
Yeah.
So they can, most people at the end of the day like to come to work and think, I've done a decent job today.
Yeah, they do.
And sometimes targets are not clear, so people don't know if they've done a good job this week, next week, this month. So I think particularly in the early days,
what's expected of them, I think.
What's expected, yeah.
What's the job description? What does good look like after your 3 months, your 6 months, your year? All of those sorts of things. I think some people shy away from them because they don't want to put pressure on someone.
Yeah.
But when you do exit interviews, you hear all the time that people actually just want that clarity.
That what you just said there is really true. We're finding a lot that kind of managers are basically, they're shying away from the difficult conversation. They're not giving the feedback, with radical candor that people need in order to improve and get better, and they're either not giving it because they don't have the skills and confidence, or they're not giving it because they don't really know this person because they've never met them face to face, or because they're a technical manager who's been tired, and But we're finding loads that there's this avoidance of difficult conversations.
Possibly a fear though of, am I going to get sued?
Well, probably.
This am I going to deliver it in the right way?
Yeah.
And am I going to offend someone? So you start.
That's what litigation's interesting because maybe people are feeling that and they're not sharing it. But what people are sharing is just like, I don't want to offend, and it's like, people are being very nice and very polite instead of being kind.
Literally, I was literally kindness thing that was the tip of my tongue.
It's true.
There's a difference, isn't there?
With the right intentions, giving them feedback is a gift. Yeah.
We've talked about this before, though. You mentioned it there. Do you think that sometimes if you haven't built that rapport, it's very transactional, isn't it?
Yeah.
And it's quite tough to give someone, it's really tough to have a hard conversation with someone if every interaction is transactional. Whereas we've always said, if you've built that relationship and you've got a good relationship with someone, if you're having that conversation, it is a bit of a tough conversation. Both sides should know you're doing it for the right intentions.
Yeah.
So it does become a lot easier, doesn't it? Because
getting to know your people, isn't
Well, it's
spend the time building that relationship, so you can say the good things and you can say the more challenging things, and you can give it and you can receive it.
It's like when you get to that point of appraisal, it's not even needed because you've been going through that conversation day in, day out, day out.
Awful.
The end point is, yes, well done, right, well done now. Yeah.
So when someone hasn't buggered off,
You managed to cling on to
yeah, now what?
I think it comes back to say, do you understand what motivates them? Do you understand? It's almost like if you imagine the Venn diagram, isn't it? There's stuff that the business needs its employees to do, and there's things that the employees need. And that's the cultural shift. I don't think that Venn diagram ever existed. I think it was all very much about what the business needed.
Yeah.
But I think the teams that are thriving now is they're realising that kind of contractual agreements and KPIs and stuff, they need to land for both. And I think the key is then kind of, it's this alignment. So if we can understand and divine where this stuff, and we've got the psychological safety, so we're not avoiding the difficult conversations. So if we start to veer, we can bring ourselves back. And then there's probably your stuff, Trev, in terms of having the actual aligned kind of behavioural understanding. So there could be a development plan put in that's going to work for that person.
And consistency. I think if it's got to be like you say, John, it is a journey with that team member as well. So it's about making sure how you set your stall out from the very beginning is consistently held throughout their journey with you as a team member as well. So it's things like your rhythms in your morning, when you do your huddles, it might be when you do your Friday calls to say, right, what have we done that's helped us achieve our main goals this quarter. It's like all those things just need to be just regular things that are happening, and people know where they stand and what they can bring with them.
It's that overlaps with a lot of the work that we do, which is around rituals.
Yes.
So we help them set like what we call them connection rituals, but like they're habits that we get into as a team that ensure we are prioritising the things that matter to us.
Yeah.
So if you know, so one of them, for example, is gratitude. Gratitude is a brilliant way of really ensuring that we are building understanding, being inclusive, rewarding people for the behaviours we want to see. So you know, some groups might say, right, we're going to have a feedback Friday. It's a ritual we do as a team. Other organisations might be like, right, all of our managers have got a rod stuck up their arse. They're never vulnerable. They're always very straight-laced. We need to break them down. We need these guys to be like, you know, sharing and being vulnerable. So they might instigate a fuck up Friday every Friday, or they share something that they've ballsed up that week. And so these rituals are ways of saying what matters is what's the behaviours and the things. When they become rituals and the things that you do, they're embedded and they really start to have that ongoing impact.
Yeah.
And yeah, that consistency of keeping going.
Yeah.
Back to Trevor's point.
Yeah.
That could take a week or it could take 5 years.
Yeah.
You know, but it's having the confidence and
But if it's a ritual, then, you know, because if you're scaling a business, there's going to be times when things just get really tough.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we're under the cosh, or the market's dipped, or we're late on a product release, or we're waiting for the next investor round and it's not coming and we're all crapping ourselves. It's really hard at those times to stay connected, to stay rational, to be truthful, to act radical candor, and all of this stuff. Whereas if we've still got these rituals, if we're still doing Feedback Friday and we're still making sure, if we've got these rituals, they can sustain us and sustain that trust and that connection even when we're under the cosh.
Yeah.
Otherwise, we just revert back to type, don't we? It's really hard.
Bold predictions. What are the bold predictions for growing a thriving team over the next year, 3 years, 5 years?
I think the current surge on RTO mandates is going to fall over on its arse.
Because is that still growing at the minute? Is that the stats?
The stats are showing that they're failing. It's,
Right, okay.
they're not organisations, some of the larger organisations in the retail space, in the financial services space, they're not really given data-driven cases as to why we turn to the office. It's affecting women and underrepresented groups. It's a real EDI challenge. But in my mind, like I said, we had this cultural media, social media shift like a decade or more ago. Companies can't just suddenly say we're going to ignore Facebook and start just doing newspaper ads again. In the same way, we've changed now. Flexibility is part of our working lives. It's essential for people and products. We can't pretend it hasn't happened. So yeah, I think it's going to.
Because it started in the US, didn't it? Like massively in a few of the big US companies.
Yeah, but it's happening. The latest data that's coming out is proving that it's failing, and it's proving. This London, I should have checked it up, but it's like it's 46% of people would instantly start looking for another job if their office tried to enforce a full-time RTO. I just think it's short-term thinking.
Yeah,
Human connection, not physical connection.
I totally agree. I think companies have got to find a way, and it's not easy to try and embrace the hybrid or the whatever it may be. But yeah, how do you, I guess there's how do you communicate and how do you make sure people are effective in terms of productivity? So there's two key elements there. It isn't easy, but they've got to try and find a way to embrace it. Through systems, processes, communication, rituals, whatever it may be, to embrace it rather than fight against it. The simple fact is, there's no right or wrong. It's not like everyone should be in, everyone should be at home. There's somewhere in the middle. And I think you've got to embrace it and see it as an opportunity, not think, oh, we need to get everyone back in the office all the time, because that's just not going to work for everyone.
And I agree. I think it is all about that individual perspective rather than just kind of generalising stuff now. I think it's about asking individuals and knowing your people well enough to understand what floats their boat and what they need from you as an employer. I think we're still doing brushing statements. I think we're still assuming that our packages, like our benefit packages and stuff, are fit for purpose, but we've not even engaged with our team members to see if the benefit packages are actually still something that they want. I think a lot of business owners are still just making assumptions around that they think that individuals want certain things, and it needs to be more about getting to know your people, stop being lazy, and actually build that connection with people and understand what motivates them, what makes them tick, and what makes them thrive. Rather than sitting behind a desk and cracking on. I don't think you can be that kind of leader anymore. You can't sit in an office by yourself and your team are just going to go and do what they need to do. You actually have to get in there, and you have to be approachable, and you have to be honest, and you have to be vulnerable, and you have to find out what your people want individually. And I think that's something that people are going to have to do. They're going to have to get off their seats and make the effort, or people are going to walk out the door.
And I think, in terms of forecast for the next 1, 2, 3 years, there's probably not a lot going to change, in my opinion, because companies won't react quick enough to address some of this. Because some like the stats there, where you're looking to do the complete reverse. Yeah, so trying to bring people back in the office and things like this. So I think there's probably not going to change. I think the engagement levels have been pretty flat for a number of years. So they've been really low. So I don't see anything that's going to significantly change that necessarily, generally speaking. I think we've got to try and, as I said, embrace the hybrid working, but also embrace digital technology, not just AI. That's been one of the things, but also technology. Yeah, because if you're going to have the diverse workforces and work from home, this type of stuff, then you've got to embrace digital technology. You've got to embrace AI, because it's not going to go away.
I was just about to say, we've managed to go through a whole podcast about people without mentioning AI.
It's always going to be there. Unfortunately.
I think one thing that will help people change is if they listen to this podcast, because we've built a thriving team here, I think, and we've all got to know each other. We've been vulnerable. We've developed trust. It's been a fabulous. I don't know how long it's been. It could go on forever. It's unbelievable.
Normally do.
So Sam, Di, Trevor, thank you so much for your time today and making a really enjoyable 6th episode of 2 pints of lager and a spreadsheet.
Thank you. Cheers, Jon. Cheers, Steve.
Cheers. Thank you.
Yeah.